Hello, and in this Chapman Game Dev how-to video, I'm going to be showing you how to make an effect area, like this little trigger box, cause a repeated effect as long as you're standing in it. Similar to when you stand in a fire, you'll constantly get hurt, or as long as you're standing on this button, it will constantly do this repeated effect over and over again. In our example, it will repeatedly drop these cubes over and over again in like a cool little fountain. So let's take a look at what that looks like. Let's do play from here. Here's our little trigger effect area, made it visible really quickly. Now when we walk into it, it will repeatedly spawn these cubes in a little arc. And when we step out, it will stop, step back in it, continue spawning, out, stop, in, keep spawning. Excellent. And to show you really quickly what that looks like in Kismet is this nice little diagram here. And we're going to get into exactly what's going on. The only part that's completely interchangeable with your effect is this chunk right over here. This is what spawns the little red cubes. This area will also be what you would cause, what you'd set up to cause damage, or fire a gun, or spawn a projectile, or any kind of different Kismet actions you want. Everything else here on this side is what causes it to occur every interval setup that you want it to happen at. So let's get started. So starting from a new area over here, let's first add the area that we want to affect. So if it's a campfire, you want to add this around your campfire. So let's set up our add actor trigger. So this will be our little trigger setup for when we walk into it, the effect will repeatedly occur. So let's quickly, so we can tell where this is, let's open up our properties for that trigger by pressing F4, or right-click trigger properties. Now, under display, let's turn off hidden. That way we can see it in the level and see what's going on. Now, let us now go into, that is pretty much all the setup you need for the world. If you have some other little setups you want to do for like either moving a trigger volume back and forth, or a particle system, or anything else that you want to occur over here, set that up now before you go into Kismet. Now that we're ready to set up, I'm going to be reusing the little dropping section. So now let's go into Kismet. Move all the way over here. And let's first add the trigger volume touched event from our trigger volume. So let's select our trigger, right click in Kismet, new event using trigger 10, touch. So what we'll want to do, the keystone of this whole Kismet network, is the toggling of our Boolean active value on or off. So let's do a new action, toggle. And when we touch it, we want it to turn on. When we're not touching it, so untouched, we want it to turn off. Fun thing about toggle is you're allowed to put a Boolean variable attached to it, and it will toggle it on or off, true or false. So let's right click on this little bool node, create new bool variable. Perfect. So here's our little bool variable that we're going to be toggling on and off. Let's give it a good little name in here. So like B is effect active. If you're familiar with any Unreal naming conventions, they generally put B for Boolean in front of any of their variable names. So it's often a good practice to put B in front of there if it's going to be a Boolean. So you can see is effect active right there. So we have our Boolean that we're going to be toggling on and off. So now we need to set up our effect. I'm going to quickly grab this spawning event, disconnect it from everything, pull it over here. So I just spent a bunch of time configuring this event to do what I want it to do. So as a quick test, let's just add a new event trigger touch. So I just short-circuited it right there. So I'm just going to say, when I touched it, spawn this event. So make sure it works once. So here's our event. When I touch it, worked once perfectly. Awesome. So my effect works, which is a very good thing to start with, because you want to make sure that your effect is working independently before you start having it occur over and over again. So now what we want to do is create an infinite loop of Kismet nodes that are constantly checking to see if we should be spawning causing this effect. So in our case, spawning a little red cube. So let's do a new event, level loaded. So right when the level loads, we're going to start this little trigger thing, looping back and forth. And you notice our B is effect active starts off as false. So it's not going to do anything. So level load invisible. Let's do a condition, comparison, compare bool. So in level load invisible, what bool do we want it to compare to? This one. So is this bool true or is it false? So if it's true, that means we've touched this fireplace or whatever we want, this trigger zone, and it has turned this to true. It's turned it on. So if it's true, we want to be spawning stuff. So spawn actor. Now, after it's finished, instead of just looping it right back around to compare bool, which would possibly destroy the computer, we want to add a very brief delay in here. And that's how often you want this effect to be triggered while they're standing in it. So if you're standing in fire, generally it's like every half second, every 1 second, something along those lines. So new action, misc, delay, and it defaults to 1 second, which sounds pretty good for our purposes, but so it's more dramatic than the last one. Let's set it to 0.25. So every quarter second, finished, back to compare bool. Let's kind of move this around so you can see what's going on. So you get this cool little crossing motion. So it's finished. It will go back to the start, wait for a quarter of a second, and then check that bool again. If it's true, I'll spawn another actor and then we'll wait another 2-5 seconds, and then compare it again and spawn another actor. Then, when I turn it off, it will go false, which will mean next time it comes around, false will be nothing. Nothing will happen, so it won't spawn another actor. It won't do anything. However, after it's done being false, it will now not loop back, so it'll just stop here and die permanently. So after it's done false, we want to actually wait another 0.25 seconds before it checks again. So drag false to the start of the delay, and now we have an infinite loop. So let's give that a try. So play from here. There's our little trigger. Let's wander into it, and there's our cube spawning. And because now it's at 0.25 seconds, it's rather a dramatic difference. Let's step backwards. Turns itself off. Walk into it. Turns itself back on. Off. On. Now, it's not as though we're turning this whole effect loop off. All we're doing is switching this boolean to true or false. And this compare bool is either causing this actor factory to spawn another guy, or wait another 0.25 seconds before comparing again.